Hello there everyone. Welcome to my channel Exploring Africa View. We bring you amazing content about Africa. Today we will be talking about the top 10 oldest churches in Africa. We publish new videos every day. Please do well to like and subscribe for more amazing content. Let's get right into it. Africa is home to some of the oldest and most historically significant churches in the world, many of which date back to the earliest centuries of Christianity. The top 10 oldest churches in Africa reflect the continent's deep Christian heritage, especially in regions like Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan. 1. Church of St. Sergius and Bacchus. The Church of St. Sergius and Bacchus, also called Abu Serga, is one of the oldest and significant churches in Africa. It was built in the 4th century, in Coptic Cairo, Egypt. Believed to be built on the spot where the Holy Family Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus rested during their flight into Egypt to escape King Herod's persecution, making the church an important pilgrimage site for Christians. The church was dedicated to early Christian martyrs Sergius and Bacchus, who were Roman officers in Syria and secret Christians. The church is a revered site in Christian history, particularly for the Coptic Orthodox Church. The crypt of the church is believed to be the exact place where the Holy Family took refuge. The crypt lies about 10 meters below ground level and can sometimes be flooded by Nile water during high tides. The church follows the basilica plan, common in early Christian architecture. It consists of narthex entrance hall, nave central aisle, side aisles separated by 12 columns symbolizing the 12 apostles, sanctuary with 3 altars. The central one is dedicated to Saints Sergius and Bacchus. The church is known for its beautiful wooden screen separating the nave from the sanctuary. The screen is inlaid with ivory and ebony, featuring intricate Coptic crosses and religious symbols. Numerous Coptic icons adorn the church, representing biblical scenes and saints. The Church of St. Sergius and Bacchus is not only an ancient and architecturally significant structure but also a sacred site deeply embedded in Christian traditions. It represents a vital link between Egyptian Christianity and early biblical history, making it a spiritual beacon and an essential destination for believers and historians alike. 2. Hanging Church Al-Mulaka. The Hanging Church, also known as Al-Mulaka, is one of the most significant and oldest Coptic Christian churches in Egypt. Located in Old Cairo, Coptic Cairo, the church holds a central place in the religious and architectural history of Egyptian Christianity. Founded originally in the 3rd century AD, but the current structure largely dates to the 7th to 9th centuries with later restorations. The church creation was dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The church is called the Hanging Church because it was built on top of the southern gate of the Roman fortress of Babylon, which gives the impression that it is suspended or hanging above the ground. It stands above 13 meters off the ground. The nave is supported by palm trunks and layers of stones above the fortress gate towers. The Hanging Church is a masterpiece of Coptic architecture, combining Egyptian, Byzantine, and early Islamic artistic elements. The entrance is through a narrow alleyway leading to a staircase, which gives it the feeling of elevation. A facade added in the 19th century gives it a more modern appearance, with 2 twin bell towers. It is one of the most venerated sites in Coptic Christianity. The Coptic patriarchs often took residence here starting from the 11th century. The church have been restored and renovated several times, notably under Pope Abraham 10th century and during the 19th and 20th centuries. The church is one of the most popular tourist attractions in Cairo for both religious pilgrims and history lovers. 3. Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. The Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion is one of the most sacred and historically significant churches in Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity. Located in Aksum, in the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia, it is revered as the holiest church in Ethiopia and is strongly associated with the Ark of the Covenant. Believed to have been built in the 4th century AD by King Izana, the first Christian ruler of the Kingdom of Aksum. The church marks the official adoption of Christianity in Ethiopia around 330 AD. The original church has been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times, destroyed by Muslim invaders in the 10th century during Queen Giudit's reign. The church was then rebuilt by Emperor Gevra Meskel and expanded over centuries. The current, old church, was rebuilt in the 17th century by Emperor Fasilides, 1635. A new cathedral, the New Church of St. Mary of Zion was built next to the old one in the 1950s by Emperor Haile Selassie. Central to the church's fame and sanctity is the belief that the original Ark of the Covenant, brought by Menelik I, legendary son of King Solomon, and the Queen of Sheba, is housed in a small chapel next to the church. Only one monk, the guardian of the Ark, is allowed to see it. He is appointed for life and remains in seclusion. According to Ethiopian tradition, the Queen of Sheba visited King Solomon in Jerusalem, bore him a son, Menelik I, who later returned to Ethiopia with the Ark of the Covenant. Every year, especially on November 30th feast of St. Mary of Zion, thousands of Ethiopian Orthodox Christians make a pilgrimage to Aksum. Women are not permitted to enter the old church, although they may enter the new cathedral. 4. Church of St. George. The Church of St. George, located in Ethiopia, is one of 11 rock-hewn monolithic churches in Lalibela, a town in the Amhara region. Originally named Roa, the historical and religious site was named Lalibela after the king Gevra Meskel Lalibela of the Zagwe dynasty. He is regarded as a saint by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. The Church of St. George was carved downwards from a type of volcanic tuff. This is the sole architectural material that was used in the structure. It has been dated to the late 12th and 13th century AD, and thought to have been constructed during the reign of King Gevra Meskel Lalibela of the late Zagwe dynasty. This historic church building is among the best known and oldest buildings of 11 churches in the Lalibela area. It has also been referred to as the Eighth Wonder of the World. The idea for the creation was to rebuild a structure similar to Jerusalem, structuring the landscape and religious site. To achieve such a feat on first approach, the site appears wholly inaccessible, with sheer drops on every side and no access bridge. It is accessed via a very narrow man-made canyon, spiraling downwards, which changes to a tunnel close to the church, to further conceal its presence. Pilgrims who died after reaching the site are placed in a simple open tomb on the outer walls. The hollowed interior contains a simple shrine to St. George, and behind a curtain strictly forbidden to view apart from priests, and then a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. Lalibela is a pilgrimage site for members of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. The church itself is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. 5. Monastery of St. Paul the Anchorite. The Monastery of St. Paul the Anchorite is one of the oldest Christian monastic sites in Egypt, founded in honor of St. Paul of Thebes, also known as Paul the First Hermit, widely believed to be the first Christian hermit. He was born in Thebes, modern Luxor, around AD 228. Fled into the desert at age 16 during the Decian persecution of Christians AD 250, he lived in a cave in total isolation for almost 90 years, sustained by a palm tree and a raven that brought him half a loaf of bread each day. According to tradition, Saint Anthony the Great discovered him shortly before his death. The church is located in eastern desert, near the Red Sea Mountains, about 155 kilometers southeast of Cairo and 25 kilometers from the Monastery of St. Anthony, founded 4th century AD. The Monastery of St. Paul is built like a fortress, with thick walls, watchtowers, and narrow gateways to protect against invaders. The church contains the relics of St. Paul in a crypt below the altar. Built directly above the cave where he is believed to have lived, decorated with ancient frescoes and icons. The church is open to visitors and pilgrims, though remote and reached only via a rugged desert road. 6. Church of St. Mary. Also called Bet Mariam. Bet Mariam House of Mary is one of the most significant and revered rock-hewn churches in Lalibela, Ethiopia. It is dedicated to St. Mary, Virgin Mary, Mother of Jesus, and stands out as the oldest and most elaborately decorated church in the Lalibela complex, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Located in Lalibela, Amhara region, Ethiopia. Built in late 12th to early 13th century, during the reign of King Lalibela. The church is carved from a single block of volcanic rock. Bet Mariam is part of Lalibela's northern church cluster, and is carved entirely into the ground, a hallmark of the extraordinary medieval rock-hewn architecture of Ethiopia. The church interior is lavishly decorated with carved columns, arches, and painted frescoes, some of the oldest in the Lalibela complex. The ceiling features rosette patterns, and the walls have geometric and symbolic carvings. Arc-shaped tablet is housed inside, symbolizing the Ark of the Covenant though hidden from public view, as per Ethiopian tradition. Bet Mariam is the spiritual heart of the Lalibela complex, and the most venerated of all the churches. It's believed to be the first church King Lalibela carved, possibly as a prototype or in fulfillment of a divine vision. It is a major site of pilgrimage, especially during major feasts like Jena Ethiopian Christmas and Mariam's Sion Feast of St. Mary. Still an active place of worship, where daily liturgies and special ceremonies are conducted by Ethiopian Orthodox priests. Pilgrims walk barefoot inside, and some sleep overnight near the church seeking blessings, known for its mystical atmosphere, especially during early morning prayers when incense and chanting fill the air. 7. Monastery of St. Anthony. The Monastery of St. Anthony is one of the oldest Christian monasteries in the world and the oldest still inhabited monastery. Located in Egypt's eastern desert, about 200 kilometers southeast of Cairo. It was founded in the 4th century AD around the cave where St. Anthony the Great lived as a hermit. St. Anthony is known as the father of Christian monasticism. Born around AD 251 in Middle Egypt, gave up his wealth at around age 20 to live a life of prayer, fasting, and solitude in the desert. Lived for nearly 85 years as a hermit, first near his hometown, and then in a remote mountain cave near the Red Sea. He attracted followers and became the model for Christian monastic life. He died around AD 356. His burial site became a pilgrimage location. The monastery is fortified and self-contained, built like a desert citadel with high stone walls and defensive towers to protect from historical raids. The church architecture is a blend of Byzantine, Coptic, and desert architecture, famous for its frescoes and icons, dating from the 6th to the 13th century. Restoration efforts in the early 2000s have uncovered hidden paintings and inscriptions. Monastery of Christian monasticism, highly revered not only in Egypt, but also in Ethiopia, Greece, and Eastern Christianity. Pilgrims and tourists visit especially on January 30th, the feast day of St. Anthony Coptic calendar. 8. Debra Damo Monastery. The Debra Damo Monastery is one of the most ancient, revered, and architecturally unique monasteries in Ethiopia, especially within the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. It is known for its clifftop location, 6th century origins, and its preservation of early Aksumite Christian traditions. The church is located in Tigray region, northern Ethiopia, near the Eritrean border. Perched on a steep plateau about 2,200 meters above sea level, founded in the 6th century AD by Abuna Aregawi, one of the 9 saints who came from the Byzantine Empire. Abuna Aregawi, a Syrian monk, is believed to have arrived in Ethiopia in the 6th century with the 9 saints who helped spread monasticism and Christian learning. According to tradition, a serpent or angel helped Abuna Aregawi climb the cliff to establish the monastery. The church is not accessible by road or stairs. The only way to reach the monastery is by climbing a sheer 15-meter cliff using a leather rope dropped down by the monks. Only men are allowed to enter the monastery. Women are prohibited, including female animals. This isolation has preserved the monastery from external influences and invasions for centuries. Debra Damo became one of the earliest centers of monasticism and religious scholarship in Ethiopia. The monastery held significant religious authority during the Aksumite period and continues to be revered by Ethiopian Christians. The main church is constructed using the Aksumite technique, alternating layers of stone and wood beams, flat wooden roof, rounded corners, and wooden framed doors and windows. Some original frescoes and carvings are still visible inside. The monastery is home to rare and ancient manuscripts, including biblical texts and Gizi, hagiographies of Ethiopian saints, early liturgical and historical writings. Many manuscripts have been lost due to theft or conflict, but Debra Damo remains a repository of Ethiopian ecclesiastical heritage. The monastery houses a small community of monks and novices. Their daily life is devoted to prayer and liturgy, fasting, scriptural study, manual labor. Monks rely on donations and subsistence agriculture on the plateau. 9. Church of St. George, Cairo, Egypt. The Church of St. George in Cairo, Egypt, is one of the most prominent and historically rich Greek Orthodox churches in the Middle East. Located within the Babylon fortress in Old Cairo, Coptic Cairo, it is a vital spiritual, cultural, an architectural landmark for both the Greek Orthodox and wider Christian community in Egypt. Originally built in the 10th century AD, possibly on the site of an earlier Roman tower or chapel, it is the only round church in Egypt and one of the few in the Eastern Orthodox world. The site has seen multiple reconstructions, with the current structure dating to 1909. The church stands as part of the Greek Orthodox Monastery of St. George, which includes a cemetery, library, and convent. The church was built in the memory of St. George, the patron. He was a Roman soldier martyred around AD 303 for refusing to renounce Christianity. Known for the legendary slaying of the dragon, symbolizing the victory of good over evil. His shrine in the church holds relics and icons dedicated to his memory. The architectural features, built atop a round Roman tower of the Babylon fortress. The circular nave is unique in Egypt, reflecting Byzantine influence. The interior decoration consists of a lavishly adorned with iconostasis, frescoes, and chandeliers, contains icons of St. George, scenes of his martyrdom, and miracles, marble columns, domed roof, and ornate wooden carvings dominate the interior. A relic box is kept under the altar, believed to contain some of St. George's relics. Pilgrims leave ribbons and prayers tied to the shrine seeking blessings and healing. Beneath the church is the chapel of St. George's chains, said to house chains used to bind him during his martyrdom. Believers consider them to have healing powers. The church is a major pilgrimage site, especially during St. George's feast days April 23 and May 1 and Coptic New Year and other major Orthodox feasts. Frequently visited by both Greek and Coptic Christians, as St. George is revered by both traditions. The church is part of a larger monastic complex operated by the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Alexandria. 10. Cathedral of St. Mark. The Cathedral of St. Mark in Alexandria, Egypt, is one of the oldest Christian sites in the world and the historic seat of the Pope of Alexandria, who is the Patriarch of the Coptic Orthodox Church. It is traditionally believed to be built on the site where St. Mark the Evangelist, the founder of Christianity in Egypt, was martyred and buried. According to Coptic tradition, St. Mark brought Christianity to Egypt around AD 42, during Emperor Claudius's reign. He established the first Christian community in Alexandria. St. Mark was martyred in Alexandria in AD 68, reportedly dragged through the streets by a mob. His body was originally buried in Bacchalia, the Christian quarter of Alexandria. The original church was believed to be built directly over St. Mark's tomb. Over centuries, it was destroyed and rebuilt multiple times, notably under Roman and Arab rule. The modern cathedral, as seen today, was rebuilt in 1950s, incorporating older elements and expanding its scale. The Pope of Alexandria resided here until the seat was transferred to Cairo in the Fatimid period. The church architectural features consist of a blend of Coptic, Byzantine, and modern ecclesiastical architecture, characterized by domes, arches, and iconostases. The facade features crosses, carvings, and inscriptions in Coptic and Arabic. The interior highlights a richly decorated sanctuary and nave with icons of Christ, the Virgin Mary, the Apostles, and Coptic saints. Elaborate woodwork on the iconostasis, often inlaid with ivory and mother-of-pearl. Tomb of St. Mark. Part of his relics were returned from Venice in 1968 and are interred beneath the altar. In AD 828, two Venetian merchants stole St. Mark's body and took it to Venice, where it is enshrined in St. Mark's Basilica. In 1968, the Catholic Church returned part of the relics to the Coptic Church, commemorated by Pope Cyril VI. These are now housed in a crypt shrine beneath the main altar. The cathedral was the patriarchal seat of the Pope of Alexandria for over 1,000 years. Even after the papal residence moved to Cairo, the title, Pope of Alexandria and Patriarch of the See of St. Mark, continues. Major events like papal enthronements, Coptic feasts, and Holy Week services have been historically held here. The church is an important pilgrimage site, especially on April 25th Feast of St. Mark the Evangelist, May 8th Coptic calendar commemoration of the return of his relics. It symbolizes the continuity of Christian worship in Egypt since the 1st century AD.